kind of what 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 kind of
Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Easter Sunday for most people in the United States. For me, just another regular day. Um, but I want to spend a couple minutes talking to you all. Um, Before you get out to your sunrise services, before you start cooking, before you get into those Easter egg hunts, um, I want to talk to you all about marriage, right? About marriage and um, a covenant, okay? And I want to talk to you about the rules of said covenant, all right? So, for those of us who are married or have been married, we know the procedure, right? Um, During the wedding ceremony, we stand before a priest or a officiating pastor, whomever that person may be, a judge, um, someone ordained to legally unionize a man and a woman uh, together, right? We have our family there. We do these things that's called the reading of the vows or taking vows, right? Which is basically a promise in front of all these people and ultimately before God, right? Um, we make these promises, we take these vows to uphold one another, to be good to one another, to take care of one another, in rich, poor, rich or poor, healthy or sick, through all the good and bad times, right? We make promises to one another to forsake all others, right? Don't give our bodies to uh, any other person throughout our marriage, right? And we make a promise to uphold that agreement, those agreements, those rules to that marriage until the day we die. Okay, meaning we're supposed to stick through this thing until the day one of us or both of us that entered into that agreement dies, right? And then we are the surviving party or the party that's still alive for however long they're going to be alive for. They are, free to go and enter into another covenant if they so please to do with someone else. Okay. Um that's all. It's not always the the easiest thing to do. In my younger years, definitely wasn't something that was easy for me um, to uphold. Wasn't necessarily easy for my partner um, or the person that I married to uphold. Uh, One probably being me and her were probably too young. We weren't mature enough. We didn't know who we were. A lot of things could have hindered that, right? But one of the biggest, the most chiefest, if that's even a word, but the premier um rule, right, that we all look at, we all hope doesn't happen, is the one where we say we are forsaken to lie down with anyone else that's outside our marriage, right? That's outside our agreement with one another. All right, that's a pretty tough one to uphold for some people who are not in the correct state of mind and in the correct state of spiritualness, who can't necessarily order their own body, order their own spirit, or have rule over their own lust and desires, right? Definitely something that I struggle with in my younger years, right? When I got married, it was something that I definitely struggled with. It was something that my wife at the time struggled with. Were we too young to get married? Probably. Were we spiritually um, not ready for marriage? Probably. Did we Were we brought up understanding um, what a marriage looks like, what it's supposed to entail, what we're supposed to be doing? Um, More than likely, right? But nonetheless, both she and I followed after our lust, right? We followed after something that was pleasing to the eyes. We followed after something that we thought would be better for us, something that presented us with new ideas and new experiences, right? We followed after things like that ultimately led us to or led to the demise of our marriage, right? Uh, and if we don't check the lust within us, it'll continue to happen. And I know this plagues people all over this country, all over the world, right? And in my opinion, it probably plagues women more so than men, right? Women tend to act more so on impulse, right? And when they begin to have these desires to go outside their marriages, because they're mentally already gone. They're already receiving some sort of outside information outside of the covenant that um, we've taken, right? They're one foot out of the relationship. They're one foot out of the marriage already, right? For men, it's more probably just a lusting, right? It's probably just that thing look good. Let me go over there and let me try it. That don't mean I'm stepping outside my marriage. I mean, that don't mean I'm stepping. I want to leave my marriage. Definitely, you're stepping outside of your marriage, especially if your wife has been presented with the idea that she was going to be the only one, right? Which is the the top, the chiefest, the premier covenant that we tend to enter into, right? Not giving our bodies over to someone else, right? What is it called? It's called, modern day we call it cheating. Now we call it shit. What is it? Sneaky links. Shit for that's probably some term some woman came up with, because sneaky links, right? We call it adultery. We call it fornication for the more spiritual minded. But nonetheless, we have broken a promise that we made to um, our supposed to be lifelong partner? What does it lead to? Okay. What does stepping outside the marriage after making a covenant with another person, or making a promise to another person, or making an agreement with another person that you will not do it, what does that lead to? More than likely it leads to divorce, right? More than likely it'll lead to a broken home, uh, um, broken children hurting, um, this whole child support and take half your shit stuff, right? It leads to children being in horrible situations to where they have to sometimes travel from one home to another, every other weekend, things like that, right? A lot of us are there. A lot of us has been there. Um, I definitely would be considered one of those people, right? I've definitely grown a lot since, my marriage, and understanding more so what I'm here on this earth to do and what my role is as a man, right? Um, but nonetheless, I will be considered someone who is a statistic, right? But when we look at what a covenant is, what an agreement is, right? When we look at where we're getting information from to get us to step outside of our covenant and our agreement, right? Do we really know what we're getting into? Do we have we considered all possible outcomes, right? Like I said, most of the time we're chasing after something that we're lusting after, right? That we're desiring strongly, right? And it's presenting us with new ideas and new mindsets, and it looks beautiful, it looks pleasing to the eyes, and so we chase after it, right? And during our marriages, sometimes we can become tired of looking at the same thing all the time. I know that's a bad way to put it, but we can become tired because we don't understand what responsibility is. We don't understand what service is. We don't understand what duty is, right? We've entered into a covenant that we thought was going to be everlasting, but our endurance is not built up enough to where we can make good on that covenant until death. You understand what I'm saying? And when we are not built up that way, the whole natural process, the natural order of a marriage gets broken. You understand what I'm saying? And hopefully this won't be a really long video because it is almost 5 o'clock in the morning here, and I just started this video, so I want to get this out to you guys as quickly as possible. So here's the thing. For those of us that call ourselves spiritually inclined, call ourselves lovers of God, right? Call ourselves church people, and we love Jesus and all that cliche stuff, right? I'm wondering if you all understand that we also have entered into a covenant with who you say you love, right? Just like we enter into a covenant when we're married, we've entered into a covenant once we say we've put on Christ. Like we now have, this new understanding on life, right? We've tried to, we feel like we've repented. We feel like, because we go into the church, or we started reading our Bible and things like that, we feel like we have a deeper understanding of life, right? Without realizing, in order to fulfill this love we say we have for God, God has laid out a covenant, an agreement. He's laid out the standard in order for us to properly love him. We have to follow this agreement. Just like when we get married, we stand before a priest, we stand before an officiating pastor, or someone who's performed this wedding, right? We stand before the Most High God and we say that we love him, but we don't understand the totality of the covenant that we've just entered into with him, right? And we can find this covenant in Exodus chapter 20, starting at verse 1, going all the way down, right? Or Exodus chapter 34. Okay, these are the standard. These things are called what we know, what you know as the 10 Commandments, right? The 10 Commandments. This is some of the law of God, right? We know in order to love God, we have to keep his law. We have to keep his Torah. We have to keep his commandments, his will. You understand what I'm saying? And the biggest, or the most premier, the chief of all these commandments is the very first commandment, which tells us that he is our God, right? His name is Yahuwah. The very first commandment is, I am Yahuwah, your God, which have brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of bondage, out of slavery, right? And you shall not have no other God besides me. You understand what I'm saying? That's the very first commandment. The very first commandment tells us you should not have no other person, meaning I am yours, you are mine. You are not allowed to go out and have someone else besides me. You get what I'm saying? That's the very first, sort of like the very first, the top, the premier, the number one wedding vow that we look at is we cannot give ourselves to someone outside of this agreement, this covenant that a man and a woman has made. You get what I'm saying? And when we do that, when we do step outside, everything, like I said, everything falls apart. Everything breaks down, right? So on this Easter Sunday, what do you believe we are doing when we're out here saying that it's about Christ, about his death and resurrection, right? Which he died Good Friday and rose on Easter Sunday, But the only sign that he was going to give this world was going to be the sign of Jonah, meaning that he was going to be in the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. But he died on Good Friday, rose on Easter Sunday, which only gives us 2 days, which doesn't even fulfill the time allotted that he said he was going to be there. But anyway, what is it, or what do you think you are doing? What do you think you are doing when you're out coloring eggs, hiding eggs, having sunrise service, eating Easter hams and what do they call those things? Those sweet bun things, hot cross buns or whatever. What is it that you believe you're doing? And is it within the covenant that God has laid before us to let us see whether or not you love him or not, right? Is it the Most High's love language, right? Remember the chief, the premier, the very first commandment or agreement when we come into Christ is to not have no other God. Well, then what is Easter? What is the painting of the eggs, and what is the bunny rabbits? None of that stuff is biblical, right? Is that in his agreement with us, that we said we love the Most High God, right? Is that stuff that we're doing within the agreement, or is it outside the agreement? What is it called when either participant in a covenant, in a marriage, goes outside the marriage and gives their body to someone else? We call it adultery. We call it fornication. We call it cheating. We call it sneaky links. We call it things like that, right? And so when we step outside the covenant that we've made with the Most High, or we think we've made with the Most High, what is it called? It's called adultery. It's called fornication. It's called sneaky links. It's called cheating on the Most High God, right? Let me I got some notes here. I pulled a couple scriptures that'll prove that we are the bride of Christ. Certain people on this earth is the bride of Christ, especially when you say you've come into the knowledge of the Most High God, right? When you say that, you're telling yourself, I am taking on the covenant between myself and God, the Most High, Yahweh, right? You're telling yourself that I'm taking on this covenant. Well, the very first commandment, the very first rule in this covenant is to not have any other God, right? Let me just prove really quick that we are the bride, or the consort, or the other half, right, of the Most High God. We are the bride of Christ. And if we look at Ephesians chapter 6 or 5, right, it talks about the submission of a man, the submission of a woman to a man, right? And it goes down and lists, women have to submit themselves to their husbands have to love their wives, even as Christ loved the church. And then it says there's a mystery that at the end of that is written there. He said, I'm talking about not carnally, right? Not so much as a man and a woman, even though that's the blueprint for a man and a woman. I'm talking about Christ and his church, right? Proving that we are his bride. Okay, we look at Hosea. I got my notes. Hosea 2:19 tells us that we are the bride of Christ, right? Jeremiah 3:14 tells us that we are married to the Most High God. You understand what I'm saying? These things, these scriptures tell us that we are married to the Most High God. So if we're married to the Most High God, there's a covenant that we must be keeping. Correct? Where's that covenant? Exodus chapter 20. What's the very first commandment? I am the Lord your God. I am Yahweh, your God. I have brought you out of bondage. I've brought you out of Egypt, right? I've brought you out of all this despair and despicableness. And I've brought you out, and I've covered you. I've provided for you. I made you free. I've set you free, right? Because I've done all this for you, you can have no other God before me. Now, let's take it to Ezekiel, Ezekiel chapter 16. Ezekiel chapter 16, 1, and you can read all the way through the chapter. It talks about how God, he found us. We were polluted in blood. We were disgusting to everybody else on this earth. He took us. He washed us. He made us this beautiful. He put us in beautiful raiments and necklaces and gold and garments. And he made us this gorgeous bride for himself. He covered us, right? But we got to a point where we forgot about the service to the Most High, right? And it goes on to talk about we trusted in our own beauty, and we started using our beauty to attract other people, other, consorts, right? And we went whoring. We started committing adultery with all these other people, with all these other nations and gods, right? So let's talk about Easter. What is Easter? A lot of us don't know. Easter has some really bad roots, right? So this person, and it is a person named Easter, and I want you all to do your due diligence. I'm not going to be before you long, but this person, this imaginary person, this female fertility and sex goddess named Easter, right, was once called in ancient Babylon Semiramis, right? Was once called in the Canaanites called Asherah, right? This god is also known as, I think, to the Romans as Diana, right? And to the Greek as Artemis, and to Egyptians it once was called Isis. You get what I'm saying? And more so in modern time, this female sex god is portrayed as Mary. You get what I'm saying? I think Jeremiah calls her the Queen of Heaven, right? Diana, Wonder Woman, flies around, Queen of Heaven. You get that? The Romans called her Diana. Diana, Wonder Woman, Queen of Heaven, flies around in the sky, right? But this is a female sex and fertility god, right? Which throughout Israel's history, Israel is the bride of Christ, which represents us here on earth, right? Israel continued to go over and break the number one commandment we have, which is to not have any other God, or for this conversation, do not have any other husband outside of the Most High. Here are the things that the Most High provided if we did not break this commandment. Now, they continually break, they throughout history. You can read this history through, Judges. You can read this in First and Second Samuel, First and Second Kings, First and Second Chronicles, right? And you can just continue. You can read this in a new chapter, right? Paul went to Gentile nations, preaching to the people of God, telling them to put off these strange gods, right? One of the most prominent ones is at Mars Hills. You get what I'm saying? So, like I said, this person, this female sex goddess was known through all these different names throughout time and throughout history. What did God provide as long as we did not go a whoring after these other gods? He provided protection. He provided clothing and shelter, and he made us beautiful, and we didn't need or want for everything. He made us a great nation of people. For those of us who say we have put on Christ, we've taken on this covenant, right? So let me go through the names again. To the Canaanites, ancient Canaanites, this sex goddess was named as Ashira, right? To the ancient Babylonians, this sex goddess was named Semiramis, right? To the ancient Romans or Greek, I forget. I think to the Romans, she was known as Diana. To the ancient Egyptians, she was known as Isis. To the Greeks, she was known as Artemis. Modern day time, she's known as Mary. Right? And to the Persians is one I did not bring up. She was known as Astarte. You get what I'm saying? You see how close that is to Easter. And actually, during Persian captivity, one of our foremothers, her name, she was named after this goddess. Her name was Esther, which is a play on Easter. Now, guess what? The Americans call this sex goddess Easter. This is a female sex goddess. This is a god outside of the covenant that we have made, or we think we've made, or we say we made with our lips with the Most High God. I'm asking you, I'm begging you to do your due diligence and research these things. Look into these things, right? We say we love Christ. We love God. Well, I want you, before you go to this sunrise service, before you do these Easter egg hunts, I want you to go into your scriptures, go into your Bible, and if you can see bunnies and eggs, continue on with your celebration. But if you cannot, if you do not find bunny and eggs, I want you to question why. I want you to question what you were taught. I want you to stop and think, what the hell am I doing before you proceed? You say you've put on Christ. I want you to go to Exodus chapter 12 and 13, to where it talks about Leviticus chapter 23 to where it talks about Passover. Right? Because this is what we're made to believe we're celebrating. But there is no eggs and bunnies and chocolate and other shit in Passover. You understand what I'm saying? We're stepping outside of what God requires as a love language. We're stepping out. We're cheating on God with a sneaky link. You get what I'm saying? That's essentially what we're doing. Put in modern terms, we're cheating on someone who's providing for us. We're cheating on someone who is making us free with every ounce of truth that we come into. We're cheating on the person that, or not the person, but we're cheating on the entity that has us covered. Now, understand, as a bride, when you're covered, that means he's placed his skirt over you. That means you are his. That means you're married. That means you're here, right? But what are we doing? We're using our adornment. We're using everything that he has, or that he used to make us beautiful, to go out and attract other people. Why? Because of our lust. We see something out there that's presenting a new idea, that's giving us a new way of thought, or a new way of thinking, that's presenting us a new spirit, and we like the way it looks. And so we put on our goodliest garments and say, hey, look at me. I'm ready. Come scoop me up. You feel me? You hear what I'm saying? We are stepping outside of the covenant of God. You get what I'm saying? So if the very first commandment is not to have any other husband before Yahweh, our husband, right? Then what the hell are we doing? Let me tell you a little bit about where the eggs and this bunny's shit comes from. And I'm not going to get too far and deep into it, but the representation, or the symbol of a ton of sex. The reason they used the bunny is the same reason they used Hugh Hefner used the Playboy bunny, because bunnies are very fertile. They have a lot of sex. You get what I'm saying? Those eggs, right? It was said that Semiramis came down. This is the shit that y'all don't even know that y'all doing. Y'all celebrating these people, these false gods, out of ignorance, right? She came down to earth in an egg, which represents a female's egg, fertility, right? And was hatched out of that damn egg, right? In ancient times, those eggs that y'all out there coloring and painting and shit, they were dyed and sacrificed children's blood, right? There's nothing new under the sun. That's a principle of the Bible. There's nothing new. These eggs that represents this sex god or sex goddess, a sex and fertility goddess, sacrifice children, right? People who worship this sex goddess, this sex and fertility goddess, right? The people who worship this person sacrifice their children to them, kill their children, use their blood, and dyed eggs in sacrificial children's blood. You understand what I'm saying? So every time you paint an egg, that's the blood. That's symbolically the blood of a dead child, You get what I'm saying? But we out here just doing what we do out of ignorance, out here sneaky linking on the Most High, breaking the covenant that you say you've entered into. Those who love me will keep my commandment. Well, you're breaking the very first commandment. Do you, in all good conscience, do you believe that you love the Most High God? Do you believe you love Jesus Christ, who you call Jesus Christ? If you're breaking the first commandment by stepping outside of the relationship with him. You get what I'm saying? So, when we marry here on earth, when we marry our partners, our wife, our husband, right? When we marry that person, we enter into an agreement. I am not going to give myself to another person. And if you do, it is adultery. It is fornication. It is whoredom, right? When you have believed that you have put on Christ, when you believe that you have entered into a covenant with the Most High God, you have to do your due diligence and figure out what is that covenant. What does that covenant entails? What are the rules? What is God's love language? Well, I can tell you the very first one. Exodus 22:3, Exodus 34, 17, is it? Nope, Exodus 34, 13, 14, and 15. Both of them say, I am Yahweh, your God, your husband. You cannot step outside of this relationship with no one else. But with this Easter shit that you guys are doing without even understanding, without even knowing what you're doing, right? Without even knowing that you're bowing down and worshiping, you're whoring yourself out to another God because it's beautiful, because of celebration and the painting of the eggs. It's lust of the eyes. It looks good to you, and so you want to dote yourself on top of. You feel what I'm saying? And though if you're not laughing at that joke, it's because you don't study your scripts. You understand what I'm saying? You are going after gods of wood and stone, a Shiva's pole, the ancient Canaanites, right? They made these out of wood. They made these poles. They made these little wood statues of this sex goddess named Ashira, right? Which, when you read all through, you can see who cut those things down and who kept them up. One of the greatest kings Israel has ever had was King Solomon, right? Had the most wisdom of all of the kings of Israel, but he couldn't cut down those high places. Those high places were places of idolatry. When you read in Kings, First and Second Kings, First and Second Chronicles, Samuel, those high places that Kings, that the book of Kings, both First and Second and the Chronicles, they talk about, these are worship places to Astarte, to Asterisk, right? At this time, Diana and Artemis wasn't known to them, but the same person before then took on the name Astarte or Ashira, right? And these plagued Israel, right? And then when we went after these gods, meaning when we stepped outside of the relationship, just like in these earthly relationships, just like in our earthly marriage, when we step outside of that, guess what the consequences are? A broken home. No more provision. The children becomes confused. The children don't know whether or not to serve the mother or the father, or to be loyal to the mother or to be loyal to the father. Or sometimes they're jumping back and forth, right? They're in a situation to where they have to travel to two different households, getting two different ideas of life, when we're supposed to be unified as a family. So when we break the covenant in our marriages, it's the same thing as breaking the covenant in that we entered into with the Most High God, with Christ. You understand what I'm saying? And when Israel broke these commandments, that very first one, read through the book of Judges, right? From Othniel to Deborah to Gideon, right? That one commandment you will see that was broken all the time. The very first commandment they went to, that they broke and destroyed, was worshiping other gods of wood and stone. And what happened? They went into slavery. They had broken homes. They had to get other people to come and deliver them out of their hand. They cried unto God. God came and rescued them. But then they went straight back to Ashira, to Ashtoreth, to Astarte, to Easter. You understand what I'm saying? But you out here worshiping Mother Mary as the Queen of Heaven. You out here worshiping Easter, not knowing that that's a play on the Persian word Astarte. That's a play on the Canaanite word Ashtoreth. You get what I'm saying? Do your due diligence. Check the covenant. Check the promises, right? Deuteronomy chapter 28 tells you, if you start worshiping other gods, if you start whoring yourself out to other gods, he's going to leave us. I think Jeremiah chapter 3 tells us, turn back, O backsliding Israel. Meaning, hey, I ain't providing all this protection with you, but you out there cheating. Come back so you can get this protection. There is nowhere in Scripture that'll tell you that God blessed people who did not keep His covenant. Nowhere. Why would God? Why would Christ? Why would Yahweh? Whatever you want to call Him. Why would He bless something that is not in the covenant? Why would He protect and provide for someone that continuously go out getting sneaky links? Why would He do that? What incentive does He have? You know what He's going to do? He's going to cut you off. He's going to divorce you. For those of you who think divorce is not something of God, right? Jeremiah tells you that. Ecclesiasticus 25, I believe, tells you that if a woman will not do the things that you have set out before her, divorce her, write a divorcement, and put her out of your house. This is what God is going to do to us. He's going to do it to you if you continue to go after these other gods and follow the lust of your heart. You do not have any authority to make up any rules and say, well, I'm doing this for God. No, God already, he already pre-written His rules. You cannot change them and say, well, I'm doing it for. He's not going to honor that. You understand what I'm saying? But anyway, the way we step outside of our marriages, the way we break the covenant to our marriages is the same way we break the covenant with the Most High God. You understand what I'm saying? What is it called? Adultery, fornication. Here on earth, guess what? In the spiritual realm, what is it called? Adultery, fornication, whoredom. You get what I'm saying? So do your due diligence before you go out and you start to do these things. Ask yourself, is it in the covenant? And if it's not, I will stop and think, and I will review your covenant and come back, oh backsliding Israel. You understand what I'm saying? That is the natural order. I'll holler at y'all.